All right, so just kind of to backtrack a little bit here. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to a little Teams fundamental demo. My name is Abby Quinn. I'm a Federal Customer Success Manager with Microsoft. I've been working here for about 2 years, and in those 2 years, I've been working exclusively in Teams. I'm a big Teams advocate. It's been a wonderful tool as far as being a new employee and not always knowing how to navigate certain email politics or visibility questions. Teams has been a really great way to get integrated into Microsoft. I also went to TCU down in Fort Worth, Texas, so I was purple in college, and it's really fun to be purple in my career. So today we're going to go over, I'm just going to click on over here. Today we're going to go over a little bit just kind of your basic 101 Teams information that is going to help you kind of level set with your peers and all be on the same page as you navigate this transition. The things we're going to touch on, I'll go over private chat and group chat, which is going to be something that's a little self-explanatory. You're probably used to Skype, Instant Messenger. You're probably used to texting or Facebook Messenger, and all of those things are incorporated into the functionality that we've built into Teams chat. I'll then I'll touch on Teams itself and channels within those teams, as well as customizing channels, adding channels, and managing them. And then I'll go over a little bit about calendar and meetings, and probably finish up with some co-authoring and file sharing. I might honestly not go in that order, but we will touch on those things. I also want to just let everyone know that we do actually have some weekly training that's going on right now as you are navigating this transition into Teams, and as we're navigating this global pandemic and working from home is the norm. There are these special topics. We're operating Tuesday through Thursday for about 90-minute sessions. Tuesday is going to be like a fundamental session similar to what I'll be giving now. Wednesday is more of like an intermediate, and then Thursday we have special topics. So if you're interested, I can provide the URL for that and let you know when to join. We've got a lot of great attendance on there, and there are active Q&A. So if I don't answer all of your questions today, feel free to join over there. Now I'm going to need to change what I'm sharing, so give me 1 second. I'm going to switch over to my demo tenant, and just to let you guys know, this is a demonstration environment. Nick, can you just confirm that you can see my screen over here? Or Jeff, anyone?
Yes, yeah, I can see it as reopening procedures.
Yep, okay, awesome. That's the screen I want. So just to kind of level set, like I said, this is a demonstration environment. The VA is actually in what we call Government Community Cloud. So that means that obviously the features and tools and capabilities have to be a little extra regulated. So that's why I do show my GCC demo environment as opposed to my internal commercial Microsoft. Something to note about the demo environment is this isn't a browser, so there might be just a little bit of limited features. I will let you guys know what those are. But if you are on your, obviously on your computers and you want to open up Teams and kind of go along with me, I really encourage that. It can help with any questions you might have, and it really helps just to kind of put things in perspective. So I'll just give the example. I always start out my morning. It used to be starting out your morning in Outlook, which basically meant spending 2 hours filtering through what's important and what's not important. And that's a big reason why Teams, we're putting so much emphasis and effort and resources into Teams and helping organizations deploy Teams. Basically, people spend way too much time in email. So where you could send a quick clarifying question, or if you could convey tone in a messaging platform that was a little bit less formalized, that's where Teams really comes in. And especially as we move into a world that's a little bit uncertain and we have more mobile workers, more teleworking, working across different time zones, we realize the need for a more collaborative center and hub for communication. So that is where Teams comes in. So as opposed to starting my morning every day in Outlook, I come into I'm using air quotes, office, my upstairs office, and I go into my activity feed. So the activity feed, I'm going to do a brief introduction to what that is, and then I will follow up at the end here and kind of put everything together. But I'm going to go slightly down this little menu bar here and start up here in this little bell. So that's basically where all of your notifications are going to be that are specific to you. Whether that's an app mention where you're tagged out specifically to something and you need to take note of that, or it's you being notified via a team or channel. Everything that you need to kind of consolidate and recognize early in the morning when you start your day is going to be in your activity feed. I'll come back to this, I promise, but let's start in chat. And I guess I'll take a quick pause right here. Is everything tracking? No questions so far? I can be a little fast sometimes, so okay. I'll just keep
here.
This is Cheryl. I don't know if we're supposed to be able to kind of read what you are showing, but it's kind of hard for us to read it, at least me.
You got it. I think I can. I'm trying to zoom in and my shortcuts are not working. Hold on.
Yeah, Abby, if you go to, yeah, that works, the browser zoom.
I'm just going to do this really fast. I have like an app that I use to do this, but is that a little better, guys?
Yes, that is, at least for me. Thank you.
I know, that's that. Thank you for keeping me honest there. I'm on that second screen and I just don't quite get it all the time. But anyways, okay, so here we are. This is going to look like, and I'll just explain some of the lingo I'm going to use here. I call this panel over here, this white panel. You'll see I clicked on my chat icon and it took me to this interface right here. I call this my chat panel. So this is where all of my active chats are going to show up, and they're going to go in chronological order from whenever I received them or whenever there was activity in that thread. Some designations here to note is you'll see that I have some chats that have a picture, or maybe in VA's situation, it might be initials. I have this kind of chat, which indicates that it's a one-on-one chat. And then I have this little kind of calendar looking icon, which tells me that this was actually a chat that took place in a meeting. So just something to note. And then I have another chat here that has multiple people and also multiple names. So that's what I'll be referring to as a group chat. And I know that sounds self-explanatory, but sometimes you just need everything spelled out. That's the way I like it. So there are multiple ways that you can actually instigate a one-on-one chat. You can start up here in this little square with the pen looking thing. It says new chat. I'll just go ahead and start one with my friend Diego. That I can just type out a message on a one-line situation, or if I click down here, this A with the paintbrush, it'll take me to a little bit more formatting and customization capabilities. If I click enter now, it won't automatically send. It actually brings me to a new line, and if I want to do something bulleted, as you can see, I've done this before, we'll do A, B, C for this example. This gives you just a little bit more formatting if you want to do something that's a little more formal, or if you need to call certain things out and highlight them, this allows you to do that. But I do use most of my instant messaging in my chat for like quick questions and clarifying conversations, that kind of thing. So something to note there. The other options that you have here, you'll notice you have the paperclip, which everyone should kind of associate with attaching a file. It's exactly what it does. So I can go to my OneDrive, or I can upload from my computer. Again, I'm in my demo environment, so it's kind of a weird, doesn't always pull everything. But we'll go up here to this, and we'll do, let's see. There we go. Just another little training stuff that I want to send to Diego. So that's a file, and then you can see that status bar, it just changed to ready to go. You can send that off. And then we just shared a file, it lets me know. Okay, so this, just so you know, it's a one-on-one chat, which means that everything behind the scenes is being stored in your personal OneDrive. I point that out just so you know that there's a big difference between Skype for Business and Teams and that of persistence. So when I close out Teams at the end of the day and I come back the next morning, all of these chats are going to be available and ready for me to take a look at. Like, it's not going to disappear the same way that it does and that you're used to in Skype. It's really great for recall, really nice when you don't have to take extensive notes about every conversation that you have. And the other great thing about this is everything is going to be stored if you share a file. I call this the tab bar up here, so you can have multiple tabs that are pinned to a certain conversation. And files is going to be where all of those files, whether it's a Word document, a PowerPoint, Excel, it'll all be stored here. And you can tell who sent it. Another thing to note is document permissions are set at the level from the person who made them. So I'm the person that has the ability to lock down a document or require a password should that be needed. Just something to take note of
So
there.
is that a shared instance? So if Diego makes a change and then saves it again, it's the same file that you're both sharing?
Yep, all real time. It'll all be saved. I don't have to do anything. I'll actually go ahead. I'll skip a little head here and show you guys co-authoring really fast. But as you can see, I just clicked on the Files tab, and then I just selected that file itself. And you can edit in Teams itself. So you can go down here, and this is just, I talk about different resources that are available for Teams. And if someone else were to join me here and click edit at the same time, their name would appear right next to mine, and it would say Diego is also editing this document. I'd also be able to see where he was located in the document, and I could check his changes. If I needed to do something a little bit more complex than the browser kind of experience for Microsoft Word, I could select open in desktop application. And again, that's going to save all behind the scenes, all real time, and keep you up to date. So the co-authoring in Teams is pretty awesome. I know that we do a lot of, in the government space, a lot of bulletins and org-wide comms, and that requires a lot of collaboration. I will say as a best practice, if you get up to over 10 people in this scenario, editing at the exact same time, you can experience a little bit of latency issues. So if you notice that and your changes aren't super pertinent at that very moment, sign out and come back to it at a later time just to give people the chance to make the edit they need to. I've just noticed that at about 10, 11, 12 people, it just gets a little slower. But
it seems there'd be other problems with 10, 11, 12 people editing the same document at the same time, but that's just me.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of conversation that can happen here. This is just a one-on-one, but if I was in a group chat, I'd be able to have this, it's our exact same conversation. So it's a running thread. But really great for recall, this files tab, and editing in Teams is great. I think that it gets things done a little bit faster, and you don't have to go to 17 different places to find a document, and gone are the days of having to check something out. I can't even wrap my brain around that after using Teams for 2 years.
Okay. A couple questions. One is we're already sharing a lot of information, use SharePoint for files, for storing files, which is another way of doing it as opposed to storing files within this tool. Mm-hmm. What are the general recommendations on what should be shared within Teams versus SharePoint?
That largely is going to depend on the way that your work group operates. I would suggest, honestly, I don't see a need to operate in SharePoint after using Teams. I think that Teams just has a little bit of an easier user experience. I think that I honestly think learning how to use Teams and using file storage and file sharing as a way to learn how to use Teams is a really great way to get your feet wet and to get comfortable with the tool. Nick, do you have anything to add?
So Abby, the one thing that may be a helpful clarification there is, so all of the file activities within Teams, it's not a separate store, right? It's really just kind of providing a visualization and a fancy linking to where the document lives in OneDrive or SharePoint. Now, where there may be a distinction is when you create a team, it creates a separate SharePoint site for that team. So if you already have a SharePoint site that you're using and collaborating in documents, you may want to just continue keeping your documents there if everybody already has access and it's organized. Or you may say, well, hey, now that we have a team, we're going to kind of reorient around that team. We'll still have the SharePoint site that's under it. It's just a different SharePoint site. So that's usually where there becomes a decision or transition, is if you already have a SharePoint site and then add a team separately.
Diego, this is Dave. Let me add a twist to that. So for stuff that we work on internally, we fire up a new team, say to work on a specific project. It would make sense maybe that all their files would be under the SharePoint site that gets created behind the scenes for that team, right? Because it's all stuff they're just working on internally. But we have a SharePoint site that's public facing, that we have a lot of documents organized on, that while we work on them, other people go there to find them and read them. And so we need to leave them in that structure because our website and everything else kind of ties into that document structure, our public facing SharePoint site. So that, I guess what our team would need to know is, how do we link a document in here to work on but we're actually working on the one in that SharePoint structure so that we don't create 2 copies and then have to, somehow figure out how to republish the document or keep track of which version was the current version.
Yeah, and let me add to that. This is Melissa. The way we've designed and organized ECSO is that we have team sites, our team SharePoint teams, based on the groups within ECSO, such as the VA core team, such as the comms team, the CAS team. We even have an acquisition team. So we do have teams set up within ECSO. We just don't have a large, big ECSO team. We do have an ECSO team SharePoint site. So that's kind of how we've organized it. Abby, just to kind of clarify as well.
Abby, do you want me to speak to those use cases? Because that might be a good learning opportunity to talk just a little bit about some of the options as it relates to those.
Sure, take it away, Nick.
Okay, so the example you guys gave is very common, right? And so you may have heard, if you've heard some previous Microsoft presentations on Office 365, us talk about like inner loop versus outer loop communications. So when we think about teams or the teams within teams, we're really thinking about those kind of workspaces for a defined group of people. It might be a very large group of people, but it's kind of a defined list. So you can think about it kind of like, your own office floor, your own conference room, right? That's what that team is. Then there's scenarios like you guys brought up where there's kind of, whether it be more externally facing, whether it be within the organization or outside of the organization, right? So kind of like, how does your group work, whether it be a working group or a department, interact with your customers or your stakeholders, right? And so that's then more of that outer loop scenario. You think about like a help desk or like a case where you're publishing documents out to an audience of people. And that's a really good use case for kind of the traditional kind of SharePoint intranet site. So they're not necessarily mutually exclusive, but you typically a team wouldn't be used for that kind of like, few to many scenario. It's for the people who you're either in the team or not in the team. So what we typically see is there's 2 approaches that happen when you have that kind of, hey, we've got our, the people inside who are on the stage crew. You think about like a theater is a good example, right? The people who are part of the theater production versus the audience. And in that case, the people who are part of the theater crew have the team. They may or may not have files there, their working papers or stuff they're sharing and chats and meetings and other stuff. And then they have a space where they're publishing. So then they'll either set up some sort of workflows or manual or automated to say, hey, how do we take files from the team and promote them to the public space? Or whether it be through adding things like tabs or links, the files will live in the kind of public space where they're being worked. So Abby, I know you haven't gotten to the teams yet, but do you want to show like just adding a tab real quick? So if you go to add the tab, in any channel, doesn't matter. And so here in this case, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead real quick. If you close the X, so there's always going to be that files tab, right? And that files tab, that is going to show the files that are in the team's SharePoint site. Right, the internal SharePoint site.
The local site for this particular water cooler team, right? Okay.
Correct. And so all the people who are members of that team will have access to it and they can work on it and do all the things that are in SharePoint. If you have another SharePoint site, which is, let's say, that you guys maintain, but that many, many people then have, say, read-only access to, and you guys have edit access to, that might be a scenario where, Abby, now if you go over to add the tab, you might then add that document library or that SharePoint site as another tab in here for that other site. And now you kind of have that for the team. You have the dashboard of here's our internal files versus our kind of shared files. The files are living in 2 SharePoint sites, but at the end of the day, then the user experience is so when I click on it in the other SharePoint site, I'm editing that file in that public facing site. And when I go to the files tab, I'm editing files within my internal site, right? So kind of that, our internal filing cabinet versus our bulletin board. So hopefully that makes a little more sense in terms of that scenario. There's no right or wrong way to do it, but it's just a matter of utilizing the functions of the tools to best fit both how you currently have it set up as well as the business workflow that you want to execute. So I'll turn it back over to Abby, but hopefully that was
that was very helpful, and it sounds like we have a couple of use cases where we may have a team formed around managing our SharePoint site, and they may use that tab, or some of us may, depending on the team. But that was helpful,
absolutely.
At least.
And similarly with the chat, you could put links to those other SharePoint files right in the chat. The only distinction is if you actually go and quote unquote upload or attach a file, it's going to save it into the internal team files versus just linking to a file.
It becomes a copy, right? And then at that point, you're now.
But you can still directly link. You could just add the link to that file in SharePoint, and if somebody clicks on it, they'll go right to that file. They'll be editing that file, etc. So, all right. So, sorry for the segue, Abby, but it just seemed like teachable.
Great.
So
absolutely, this is I want this to be as beneficial as possible. So I don't need to have an agenda. Nick, you're totally cool. I hope that shed some light. I really liked the kind of a comparison you made to a theater production. I think that's a really great one. I might steal that from you. But great segue into talking about teams and teams itself. So for those of you that maybe were a little bit lost in that conversation, when you create a team, you are essentially creating a SharePoint site behind the scenes. So think of Teams as being built on top of Outlook and SharePoint. And so, the work from home water cooler is its own team site. And then within that are SharePoint folders, or its own SharePoint site. And within that are SharePoint folders like general, the water cooler, and leadership water cooler. I'll just quickly go over what it's like to create a team. I don't know if everyone saw that, but I went down here to my bottom left-hand corner over here where it says join or create a team. You should be able to see all of the public-facing teams, and you can create either a private, public, or an organization-wide team. You would do that by clicking this little purple button. You could totally import from an existing group, or you can build a team from scratch. And then if I wasn't in the browser, you would see an org-wide team here, but I will make this public for right now. Give it a name, click create, and you'll automatically start adding some members. And it will appear on your, I call this my Teams panel. But for today, I'll probably be working around this whole water cooler one. I think it's a reasonable demonstration environment. So by default, the general channel is going to be created with every team that you make. And I like to think of teams as like binders or trapper keepers from back in school days, where you have one big binder for every day, and within that you have subdividers that have different kinds of content, whether that's like math, history, and then within those subjects you have quizzes, homework, notes, or whatever. And so think of that kind of as you're cascading down this team's idea. So general would be like I call it my homeroom. So it's like where everything goes. Something to know is that if you are a member of the water cooler team, you will have visibility into everything within each channel unless it is designated as a private channel. So I'll elaborate a little bit more on that. Private channels are, for example, we did this one as a leadership water cooler. So it's going to be people that are in the leadership team where they're maybe exchanging some sensitive information that not everyone needs to be aware of. This master lock little key thing indicates that it's a private channel, and only members of that private channel would be able to see this. If you're not a member of that channel, you would not even know that this channel existed. That just got rolled out to the government community cloud, so that's a pretty cool new feature update, just to know. You can see here that some of these channels are bolded, which indicates to me that there is something within those channels that I have not read. So if it's bold, it's unread. And you I don't know if everyone saw this, but there was a little exclamation point like this next to that, which indicates that someone has designated that post as important. So there's different ways that you can make posts, and you can delineate their urgency based on what you think that you need. As you can see here, we've got some banners here, which basically means you're able to start a new conversation or create a post, and you can actually do a little bit of customization with this. So you click that little A with the paintbrush again, you can create a conversation, or you can create an announcement, which will show up with this little cheer horn, if you will, next to people's screens, so they know that this is kind of like a all-reaching, far-reaching conversation or announcement that needs to be said. You can moderate who can reply, so either it's going to be everyone or just team owners. And you can also post this in multiple public channels. So you can add a border if you click announcement, but this is just some of the stuff I want to showcase because I know that you guys are probably using Teams at its very like basic functionality, but you do have a lot of customization. And you know, as we're working from home and maybe not seeing each other as often, it's nice to maybe have a little bit of color, a little bit of morale. So just something cute to know.
Abby, sorry to interrupt. Is there a way to flag a notification from an individual user or something so that it gets highlighted? Because what's happening to me in particular is I get inundated with 500 updates saying there's messages, but
right. Absolutely. So let me answer your question. I'm sorry, what was your name?
Will McDonough.
Okay, great. I saw W, and honestly, I assumed your name was Will. I hope that's okay. But okay, let's see. So if you want to, so there's two different ways I would tell you how to do this. So one of the things that helps me whenever I first get in, especially if I have like a ton, like if there's like 60 little notifications in my activity feed, this filtering button will allow you to do just your mentions. If you click this ellipses here, you can filter it out just on your mentions or your unread comments. It's a really great feature if you're trying to catch up or if you've been like out of office for a few days or something. This is really great. You can filter your notifications that way. The other thing that I do.
Hold on one second, Abby. Let me just clarify something. But that only works if every time somebody's referring to you, they use the @Will or @Dave or context and put it in a prompt, right? That's generally what that'll pick up, right? So we'd have to start doing that as a team. Like when we mention people, always reference by that @ so it'll flag it here.
Yes. But even if someone doesn't mention you specifically, but they post something in a team or channel that you are a part of, you can go to your unread. So
okay.
It's great if you're using the @mention. I think that's an awesome feature, and it really helps me to isolate what like are action items for myself. However, if you do like, if there's some announcements that you haven't read, you can filter to unread. The other option, it's a really great clarification, but the other option is, let's say that these reopening procedures were super important to me. I can go to this ellipses and save the message. And then, does anybody know where those go? I'm actually kind of curious. I'm going to quiz you.
No idea.
No idea? Okay. So I didn't know. I'm asking because I did not know the answer to this for 18 years. And that's embarrassing, but it's true. Up here at your, up here in this right-hand corner of your screen, you should see either your initials or your headshot. If you click on this and you go down, you were given all these options that I had no idea existed. But you can click saved and it'll take you to a repository of all of your saved messages. So if there's something you're following or something you don't have an answer for, but they're tracking down an answer, you can save things right here, and it's really easy. You can unsave them from here as things get checked off your list. But that's a great way to stay organized.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yep.
Abby, this is Joe 4K. I think what Will's trying to ask you is if we can actually have it where if a message is coming from, say, from Dave, or it's coming from Sue or Jim or Jeff, we could have it flagged to where those messages will be highlighted at the top of our list. I know you can pin them in the chat for individual chats, but how do I pin them to where I see theirs first and I know to go look for theirs first?
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
In
That's
the
exactly
teams.
what I'm going.
Okay, so as far as I know,
I kind of knew what you were looking at because I have the same problem, Will.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm not exactly sure of a way to, I know there's a way to, and Nick, if you want to chime in here, go ahead, but there is a way to make people priority access. If you go to your settings and you go to notifications, you can scroll down, you can follow a person's status, available or offline. You can also create priority access, which means that if you're on do not disturb or busy, that their notifications will still come through. So that's a great way to prioritize people. But as far as I don't know all the names you just listed, but if you were looking for a specific post or, some relevant information specific user, you can always type in their name. And this is a nuanced detail. If you type in their full name and but if you type in their full name and click enter, like enter return on your keyboard, it'll take you to all of their posts. Anything where they posted something or mentioned anyone or within your channel that you're involved in, you could filter it out. One thing to note here is if I didn't type out her name and select enter and I just clicked on Roxy, it would take me to our one-on-one chat. So you're going to want to type out the full name and then click enter, and then it takes you to all the posts that they've had. As far as pinning notifications to the top, I am not aware of a way that you can do that. Nick, keep me honest here.
Yeah, so I mean, there's not a way to pin a notification, but I think just if I understand what you guys are trying to get at, there's a couple aspects that Abby mentioned that just want to kind of recall out. So the first one is, Abby, if you can go over to your notification preferences. So if you click on your portrait and you go into settings and you go into notifications, these are your notification settings for how the client is going to try to call your attention to things, right? So you can you can adjust these based on your preferences to make it as noisy or not noisy as you want it to be, right? So just for example, you might say, well, hey, I don't want stuff constantly popping up. So I'm going to, like, if you pull the drop down, I'm going to say only show in feed, right? So I'll see it in my activity feed, but I'm not going to get a pop-up. I'm not going to get an email reminder, right? Or maybe I don't want to get any notification at all. The flip, and then when we go over, so if you close, so that gives you some option to kind of adjust, what is your attention's being called to. So then if Abby, if we close out of here and go back to activity. So between the activity and the search, you can think about activity as kind of like your inbox, right? So these are the things that have happened that kind of feed where then you can go and look for them, right? So maybe you could look for places you were mentioned or replies. And then what Abby showed with the search is really important because a lot of this is more search driven, right? So if I go in, it could be, I could want to say, hey, I want to see all the posts within a team or related to a subject or a person. So you can use that search and the filters. It's a little bit, the UI is not, they're supposed to be enhancing it, but the UI is not perfectly intuitive. Once you get used to it, it makes sense, but you have to search first and then you can apply additional filters. But if I do a search like she did for Bonnie Jones.
It's not at that stage yet.
So what you're seeing now is what you guys should have. Yeah. Now, the other piece, though, that I do want to call out is you mentioned about where somebody specific is messaging you. So Abby, if you go back to the chat piece, if you see how Abby has certain chat threads pinned, so the difference there becomes that will always put that in your pinned list. And so with an individual, like in the case of like there where she has a chat with Roxy, anytime Roxy messages her, it's going to be in this chat thread. The only exception to that would be is if Roxy is putting that message in a team, in which case it would be in that team, or if it's part of a group conversation. But anytime that Roxy messages Abby one-on-one, it's going to be in this chat thread. So if Roxy is a very important stakeholder for Abby and she pins that chat thread, they'll always be kind of at the top and she'll see the updates right there. And that's outside of the activity. And you can do the similar thing with channels or group chats. So if there's specific kind of forums that are very important, like let's say the HR water cooler is really important to what you're doing, you can pin that channel as well. Similar, or actually, I'm sorry, I take that back.
Hierarchy.
That's a no. Well, so sorry. The pinning the channel is a one of those features that's in beta right now. So very soon you'll be able to pin the channel, but you can pin the chats currently. So
yeah, that's where our job gets real fun when we have to figure out what's really available.
Yes. But hopefully that gives you guys a little better idea of kind of the notifications versus activity versus search. So and then the actual chat or conversation channels.
On that note, in Skype we used to get the pop-up for meeting notifications. Now that only appears maybe in Outlook. The Outlook notification, there's no team meeting pop-up.
You
can turn that on.
Be synced with your Outlook calendar so that notification from Outlook should still apply to whatever meetings you have in Teams. It's just coming from Outlook.
But there should be.
You have to go underneath that area, Cheryl. That he was showing you before. That's your picture up in the corner. And go under notifications, and you can adjust that.
Okay.
That's
Thank
what they were
you.
showing you there.
I
That's
was
where you can
wondering. I
adjust
was
it.
wondering if that was okay. I was wondering if that's the way I would go to do that. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, where it says meetings, you can pick the notification there, and then it should prompt you and say this meeting has started, that kind of thing.
I have a question.
More advanced in Teams than I thought, so please just keep the questions coming. I don't want to go over things you already know.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Under the chat or the Teams, is there a way to categorize or organize? I have like this running list of a large running list, other than pinning, or is there any other way to organize this?
So the Teams panel, that's what I'll call this. You can, by just clicking on the team itself and dragging it, you can order it whichever way you want. I order mine in the level of activity. So for the teams that I'm super active on, they're higher up on my Teams panel. For the ones that I'm less active in, they're lower. But then another layer of that is, let's say this deployment team is something that I just need to be, aware of, but not necessarily something that I need to look at all the time. You can hit that ellipses again and you can click hide, which will take it down to hidden teams. I know that this can get a little cluttered. So the hidden teams allows you just an added level of customization and organization. And this drop-down menu, you can still see when things are being posted. And it helps a little bit with that viewfinder. So, but other than that, that's pretty much the extent of organization in the panel itself.
Can you create another level like you have your teams? Can I create ECSO teams and put all our ECSO teams under there, and then have is there a way to create multiple groups, or those are my only two groups hidden in yours?
Right now, the only two groups are going to be hidden and the ones that are shown, but that's actually a really good idea. I've never heard someone suggest that, and that might be something we take to user voice.
So let me add another good idea to that, because I've been asking for this in Outlook folders forever, and it doesn't seem to ever happen.
Okay.
Is I'd like those to be color codable or made bold, because I've got 1,000 folders in Outlook, and I would love to be able to color code them in some way, or do something to make it easier to catch my eye when I'm scrolling through the folders, where to find out where I am in the list. So if you're that would be very handy. Can you
drop the link to user voice in the chat?
Yep, I will. Although actually, there's another thing that may be even better than user voice is, and so one, totally hear you on the folders. And coloring, I agree entirely. But Abby, if you go down to the little help button that's in the bottom corner, it should be.
I'm in the browser.
Maybe okay, I'll put a link there, but there's a place where you can write directly from Teams, provide feedback or suggest a feature, and that goes directly to the developers. And I know for a fact that they make them read all of the feedback that customers send. So certainly definitely tell us, and we'll be happy to circulate that. But please make use of that feature as well to submit that feedback, and they can. They use that as an important sensor of kind of how much demand there is for certain changes. So.
Well, I can give you one right now. So that being able to highlight or have a sound or something different that pings me when Dave or Sue, my bosses, ping me, that would be important.
Yeah, I think he wants to put the Darth Vader breathing.
Exactly.
when I text him.
Kind of like custom ringtones or notifications.
Yeah.
I wanted to say run in a really high-pitched voice whenever Dave pings me.
Yeah,
I've heard that that's something that is being planned, the kind of custom notification sounds, but I don't have a timeline for when that will be available. I think that's still in the development phases. So.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. Well, we're kind of at the point where I was going to head over to Q&A. So is there anything that I can show you guys specifically that you're struggling with? Are you good?
I got a couple. I don't know what you covered. So I'm responsible sort of for the whole organization. And one of my concerns is, this is great. We've kind of been thrown in the deep end about a month and a half ago when this went live, and we were doing all the COVID stuff, and everybody in the organization in OIT started using Teams. And so we've been thrown into a lot of teams. There's a lot of channels created. We're doing updates on tabs in different places, and everything's all over the map, right? And so there wasn't any real organization to how this was set up, which I get, it's not a problem. But because our organization hasn't really set it up that much for our internal use, I really wanted to come up with a strategy for how we organize our teams internally, and then how we use Teams to support our customers, to turn my 500 emails a night into maybe 50, and I could do most of my work in Teams. And but I don't think we can do that if we just, if my, 18 people on my team and most of my leads and team leads just go out and start creating their own teams, and I create a few teams, and the next thing I know, I got 38 teams I got to track now, all disjointed and disorganized. So I kind of want to almost come up with a teams planning session that says, here's how ECSO is going to use teams to do its business.
Or a template, maybe? I mean, is it a
well,
way
not
to
it's
make
a
template,
template's a template's part of it, but like I'm thinking about, just let me just think out loud here for a second. Like, for example, we have customers that we bring on board. We have hundreds of customers. Is there a way for us to use teams to interact with our customers? So we would have, a set of channels maybe per customer, and that way when we're having a conversation about a customer, we could all just go to that channel, and every file related to that customer is there. Or maybe it's a team per channel. I don't know. That's why I'm asking. That every conversation with that customer's there. That our teams that interact with the customer at different phases of the life cycle would go to that place to deal with the customer. I'm just thinking out loud. Would that be one way to do it? Do we need an internal one for each of our sub teams that we have? Maybe each of us, we have an implementation team, we have an operations and analysis team, we have an operations team, we have a app services team, an architecture team, a security team. Do we create a team for each one of those? What's the right way to organize ourselves, and which plugins do we put on there? Like I saw that there's a task manager plugin or planner plugin that lets you do to-do list. Do we put one of those on every team so that we have a consistent place to track to-dos related to that team? Do we use, I can't stand the wiki, just for future reference. That's terrible. You should throw that away. But the Word document's great. So maybe do we automatically put a Word document in every team so that when we're doing updates or kind of posting things, do we use that? I just want to come up with an approach that ECSO can use to implement teams so that we do it consistently. And when we jump to one of our teams or another, and how do we get our customers involved to cut down the chatter in a way that, secure? I can't let one customer see another customer's information, right, but that we can jump back and forth and support the customer very easily.
I just have a quick clarifying question. And when you say customers, do you mean internal to VA customers or external customers?
Well, most of the time it's internal to VA. There are other project teams, but yeah, we could potentially have both.
Okay.
Not as many of the external, but that's not so much my concern. I mean, we could always manage that external customers separately, right? But these are people that would eventually have. Mostly, they're going to be OI&T folks. I'm not necessarily thinking we would have our business customers, our distant business. Our customers are usually OI&T teams that we deal with. They're the project teams that are helping the actual customer.
This is Jim Kopesky. One thing I would add is we spent a lot of time over the course of the last couple of months moving everything to SharePoint Online, and we created Office 365 teams there. So whatever we do in Teams should possibly link back to that, or
yeah, that was my question earlier. Like, I don't want to redo all our SharePoint organization, but I see there's a way to tie in for the teams of ours that manage the SharePoint sites. They would have a separate tab, and maybe for those of us that need to get access to those files, maybe we put a tab inside a team, so when we need one of our SharePoint files, we can get it really quickly and not have to leave Teams to go find it. But I basically want to have an architecture and a plan for how we're going to use Teams. I don't want to just, puke all over it and come up with a bunch of a mess that we have to clean up later.
So we've already kind of started this, Dave. When we did and redesigned the SharePoint sites, ECSO has about 12 of them. And of those SharePoint sites, about 7 are team sites, not communication sites. And so the thing, when we were designing those and working with the EPMO team at that time, kind of guiding us, that's how we organized them, planning to use Microsoft Teams as it rolled out. So
awesome.
we already have some of that kind of laid out, but I think as we've learned today, there's ways that we can take that kind of to the next level. And
yeah, that's all I'm saying. I want to build on whatever we've done. If we've already got a strategy, then I want to figure out how to best implement that strategy now in Teams, and then add to that where we need to, right? But I just don't want all of us charging off in a direction and creating a bunch of different teams in different ways, and then we're trying to figure out how to deal with that every day.
Yeah, exactly.
And Dave, the important thing there is, I mean, you threw out a lot of really good questions, and the answer to most of those is it depends.
Yeah, I was afraid you're going to say that.
There's no right or wrong way to do it. However, what the important thing really from what you mentioned is just that there is some form of a deliberate plan, and that all of the folks who are interacting with that at least have the kind of semblance of, even if they don't need to know, like, this is why we made all those decisions, they know, here's where I go, this information is here, this is what the expectations are. And that's true whether it's Teams or not, right? Teams is just a tool. Like, I always think about it as kind of like, the virtual conference room kind of thing. So, hey, yeah, do we need 12 rooms? Do we need 1 room? What are the scenarios? And a lot of that is a matter of, and certainly something that Abby and I, if you guys want to do a planning session, can help you guys think through. But the way, just to give you a sense of the approach, is you really want to look at, what are those different populations, right? Who is working with who? Where are there information boundaries that need to be protected, right? Because, and there may not even be any. And then similar, when we say like the who, is it just, is it a specific working group? Are there multiple working groups? When you talk about your customers, are those all, what are those different audiences? And once you've kind of defined, and you probably already know this, but it's a matter of kind of putting it all and kind of mind mapping it out. Then it becomes pretty obvious of how to use not just Teams, but all the other tools, right? Similarly, it's like, hey, where do we need a distribution list, right? Because we need people to email us. Okay, so where do you need those? Where do you not, right? So from that process, you can then pretty quickly get to how do you want to structure some of that to best support how you work. But it really comes down to kind of thinking through and mind mapping out how your team works with both your customers and your other stakeholders and internally, and then you'll have kind of a design, and then it's just a matter of communicating out to everybody and following that pattern.
Yeah, pre-COVID times, we would have had a full day of dry erase board and flip charts, and
right.
I do think that, just from your questions alone, I think that probably having some sort of strategy session, that's a hard word to say, strategy session would be beneficial, where we can actually look at what you have so far and where you want to be in the future and how we help you bridge that gap.
That would be great. I think maybe, what do you guys think?
That's my team. That's excellent. Yeah, definitely.
Because I'm already seeing the benefit. I like it, and I've seen places where it made me getting to people easier. The idea that I can right click and suck 5 people into a call immediately is pretty handy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've been drawn into calls too. So sometimes when you get teleported from where you are into another call, it's kind of an interesting experience. But it is a pretty neat feature. So yeah, I think we should, because I can see where if we set this up the right way, we can do a lot of our day-to-day chatter using Teams, and it would also solve the problem we've ring in our hands, where some of us are talking to others and we don't have a chance to update others that weren't part of that side conversation. And now it's like, well, you left me out. No, I just didn't leave you out. I just haven't had that. There wasn't enough hours in a day to write that other email to tell you what tell you about the 30-minute conversation I had. But if we have a chat going or a quick post and it's all in one place, it's easy for someone that maybe was out for a day or wasn't working at that time of night to just come in the morning and see what's there, right? It just seems to be that it might be easier, that it's going to be easier to do that. Same with sharing files that are common to an effort or with a customer. One of the concerns that we deal with is we have to have an internal place to do custom work for a customer, and then a place to talk with the customer, because sometimes there's conversations we have about how do we support a customer that we don't necessarily share with the customer, right? That we might have to have. So that's part of how do we structure that as part of this conversation. So I'm just thinking out, I'm throwing a bunch of stuff out here just because I've been thinking about it for the last month as I've been thrown into this, use Teams to get through the day. So Eric, I got a feature question. One handy feature of Skype before and I guess Messenger before that was I could have 7 or 8 Messenger windows open at a time on my screen and be tracking multiple chats in a very easy way. Is there a way to get out of this one unified interface and get multiple windows broken out with Teams?
So it is in preview right now. We have it internally in Microsoft. It has not hit the government cloud, but when it does, you will be able to pop out different chats. You'll also be able to pop out different meetings. So it's coming. Nick, I can't specify how close we are to that hitting GCC, but it is definitely in the process.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect a long wait for that, but it's probably going to be sometime later this summer.
Okay, well, that's good news though. Okay, it's not never, and it's fairly soon. So okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Other question, just because I may be a rare case, but I bet you a few other folks on my team have the same problem. Sometimes I'm on 3 or 4 meetings at the same time, and I have to have audio going so I can listen for somebody to say, "Hey, Dave, I got a question." And I'm struggling with that with Teams. With Skype, I could have 3 or 4 phones going and maybe my headset, right? But I'm having trouble sometimes. So I guess I have to just use a phone. There's really no other way to do this. But Teams seems to be sometimes not always cooperate when I want to dial in or have it dial me. Is there any suggestion for that scenario? Is it just use your phone and dial into the other meetings with your phone audio?
So Dave, I do have to drop your show, so I'll be real brief, but that's something we can follow on more. So right now through the desktop or the mobile client, it's really kind of designed around you being in a single meeting or call at a time. The potential workaround is you can have like multiple browser windows open and be in multiple meetings because it's essentially like separate clients. Obviously, the audio experience may be, it should work, but it may be, depending on if people are talking over each other, and you may have to play around with your sound settings to get the right experience. But you should be able to do that. You just need to use the, open up separate browser windows and go to like teams.microsoft.com where you want to be in multiple calls simultaneously.
All right, I'll play with that just to see, because that's just a challenge. I mean, a lot of people probably aren't, but unfortunately, sometimes we have to be on one call primarily and monitor, 2 or 3 other calls for.
Yeah, you can be in multiple meeting chats, but in terms of actually being connected in the AV through at least the desktop client, it's kind of geared around. It will put the other calls on hold. So, but I do have to drop now, but I'll follow up with Abby on any next steps. And pleasure to meet you guys.
Yeah,
and
same here.
Thank you for all the work you're doing. So.
Oh, it for sure sounds like we're going to have another session. So thank you, Nick, so much. Go get to your other meeting. I will touch base with you. He is gone. Never mind. Okay.
All right, he left.
Awesome. So just to let you guys know, my focus, Nick is a little bit more technical than I am. I am heavily focused on the end user awareness and use case piece. So if you have any other questions about the user experience with Teams, I'm happy to address some of those or continue this open dialogue. I think we're learning a lot about what your organization needs and how to move forward. And I'm excited to see how we can help out in the future. So.
Okay.
Excellent. Hey, can you share calendars on here? Like I have Dave's calendar, he has mine. Can you do multiple calendars?
So the way that Teams is structured right now, shared calendar is going to be, I'll show you guys a workaround, but if you're in the calendar viewpoint, and you guys can all still see my screen, right?
Yep.
Okay. So the shared calendar is not going to appear here. What you would want to do is go into Teams itself and go to a team where you want to have a shared calendar. Say it's this COVID work from home one, go to general, and you would add in, I hate showing this example because it's not going to show up for you right now because I'm in the browser, but when you click this addition sign, you should see a pink tile that says website. I don't know if anyone's following along with me, but if you guys could check and make sure that shows up.
I'm checking right now.
Yeah. Should be like a pink website tab.
So I clicked on the wrong icon, so give me a second.
All right.
I'll find one of our teams and see. Let's go to that one.
And essentially all you do is copy and paste. Like I know a lot of people use SharePoint calendar or Outlook calendar. You would just go to the browser, pull up the calendars that you want to see as shared or a group calendar, and then import that link.
Yeah, we don't have that one. We've got document library, Excel, OneNote, Planner, Power BI, PowerPoint, SharePoint, Stream, Wiki, and Word. No website.
Probably means, to my understanding, that you don't have the website tab enabled. It's an organization specific situation. So I can follow up with that and see if the IT department is working on trying to get that enabled, or if there's a specific blocker.
Okay, that would be great.
My answer is no, there is no shared calendar, but there is scheduling assistant whenever you create a meeting, which not exactly the same, but.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, sorry I can't give you a better answer. I hate that. I'll just kind of show you guys some tips and tricks that I use. I mean, I already showed you the saved messaging or the saved post situation, but as we're working from home, setting your status message is a really great little trick. I don't know if you guys did this, but AOL Instant Messenger, remember the days of away messages? That would be here. You can, especially, parents with school-age children, if you have to go be a math teacher can add something in here. It's kind of like a mini out of office, but it also does sync to your out of office. So if you are out of office on Outlook, it will sync up on Teams. I use this all the time. I always say use Teams and wash your hands. It's my thing right now. So. I'm just gonna hang out and be open for questions.
So, Will here again. When I mute a call,
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you mind if I share my screen for a second?
Nope, let me just stop. Go for it. This is great.
Okay. So inside of here, so all these ones with highlights, or can you see my screen yet?
Yep.
So these are meetings that I'm a part of that, getting updates on.
Yep.
So for this, the Teams demo ECSO meeting, it's already muted, but how do I get, is there a way so I don't get meeting notifications? Because some meetings I don't need to be notified every single little chat that happens in them.
So okay, so there are two options here. You can see that little man running away. You can leave the chat.
But what does that do? Does that remove me completely from the meeting?
Well, you would not be able to see everything that's going on anymore, correct? Yeah, it would move it from your viewpoint. So I don't know if you're saying that you just don't want to be notified every time, like you don't want them to be bolded.
Yeah.
Or do you still want to have access to the chat?
Well, see, and that's the problem. So like this other daily, oh shoot, that's starting. This meeting I actually have to go to, but okay, so like this one that came on. All right, so I get all these notifications that XYZ left, hi Bob, I'm back, et cetera, et cetera. What it's doing to me during my workday is it's driving me over to Teams to see what happened, and then I have to go through every one of these highlighted discussions to find out, to just get one piece of information from like Dave, who I need to know what info he's sending me. But I don't need to know that Bob just went out for dinner, that type of stuff.
Right, and I also think that does indicate a level of culture change, so that using the @mentioning is going to be really important here, so that you are able to filter out through what's not necessarily important for you to know all the time. But as far as not getting those notifications, the best I can offer is the muting capability or hiding something. So you can also hide a message or a meeting chat, and it'll go away until something relevant appears again, like if it's active again.
Oh, okay.
And I hear you. I know that the chat panel is cluttered, and we do get feedback about that. It's hard to incorporate everyone's, needs for chat while also trying to keep everything persistent, because one of the biggest pieces of feedback we got from Skype was there's not enough persistence. Like we have to, remember every single thing that we talked about.
Well, that was one thing I liked about Skype, because I could have the windows open with the people that I really needed to communicate with constantly, and then I would just get dinged on those.
Yeah, I think just pinning some of these conversations. You don't have anything pinned up top, so I would maybe pin a few of the most important ones and kind of see how you like that experience. But I typically mute or hide conversations that I don't think I need to be involved with as much.
Let's do this. I think one thing that would help all of us is if we as a team, whenever we need somebody's attention, we use the @.
Right.
Yeah.
And that'll work. If we just could do that amongst ourselves, every time I need you, Will, I'll put @Will McDonough and I'll hit the chat. That's gonna show up at your you can then go to your activity tab.
Yep.
And see that show up in your @. And if we all did that when we need somebody's attention, that would help, I guess.
Yeah, and
as opposed to when it's just an informational post into a chat, right? That isn't something you have to look at right away.
Yeah, because I don't know if everyone else is experiencing this, but like when I'm trying to edit a ECSO spreadsheet here in one tab, and then I get dinged, and I'm like, oh wait, is that something important? or it sits there for 30 minutes until I'm done with my other task. So it's just the balance is frustrating.
I'll stop the recording just because you're sharing your screen and I don't want anything to be.
Oh, all right, stop sharing.
So I'm going to stop it real quick.